The proliferation of the buy button, as we've already covered today, is something we all know and feel. If you're like me, those Google Shopper ads are working, but we're also seeing the buy button proliferate into multiple social platforms. There's an explosion in affiliate marketing. So now, will this tsunami of e-commerce and the unpredictability of how much stays after the pandemic, how does it impact performance marketing strategy going forward? To take up this question, we have leading our panel, Todd Bowman, who's the VP of e-commerce at Reprise Media. He is a 13-year veteran of the digital ad space with a special focus on this channel. Todd, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I hope everyone else is doing well and excited to have this conversation.
I'm going to get out of your way and let you take it away. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, team. Yeah, so thanks everybody for coming to our panel today. We've got a great, I think, a very wide range of verticals that are covered here. So I think it's going to be great to really kind of talk through all the different opportunities that are happening. So just want to quickly introduce, is Drew on?
Yep.
Oh, okay, cool. Sorry, I didn't see Drew. So we've got 3 panelists here. We got Drew Brosnan, who's marketing director for performance marketing at Redbubble. We've got Nico Bryant-Aguilar, who's head of growth marketing at Nurx, and then Riyaad, Edoo, who's a group director in search of eCommerce and Mindshare. So we're going to talk about a bunch of different things, mostly focused on what's been happening with COVID, post-COVID, how things have changed in their space. So guys, if you would like to just kind of I guess I should actually do an introduction. So as Steve said, I'm at Reprise Commerce. I recently moved over to Reprise Media, and we launched Reprise Commerce as our commerce center of excellence. And we are really building out the capabilities, going from end to end to help brands out from retail to media to analytics to creative. So really excited to be a part of this team. And Drew, I'll let you start off with introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Great. Yeah, sure. Thanks, Todd. So I'm a marketing director at Redbubble, and Redbubble is a company that allows artists to upload their artwork onto different physical products, and then when those products are sold, they're printed on demand. So we're largely a marketplace that allows artists to sell their goods without getting lost in the hassle of sort of the complexity of an Etsy shop that would force you to also ship, handle the customer service and all the sort of details about getting your delivery and customers happy. So we handle all that stuff. And I've been in retail for about a decade.
Awesome. Thanks, Drew. Nico, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Nico. I lead our performance marketing at Nurx. Nurx is a telemedicine startup. We got our beginning sort of in the birth control space, but have been quickly ramping into other areas of telemedicine. Just in my background, I've done e-commerce, and then also I've been in the B2B world for the last 10 years.
Awesome, thank you. And then Riyaad, let you finish.
Hi, I'm Riyaad. I work over at Mindshare in New York, part of the Group Web Network. I've been doing probably SEO and SEM for, I want to say 15 or 17 years, probably a little bit more than I'd like to admit. And then ecom for about 10 years or so. I've consulted across a number of CPGs, which is what I currently do now.
Awesome. Well, actually, we'll get started with you, Riyaad, and let you kind of start this conversation, since we'll go back a different way. But tell us how COVID has impacted your clients in some high level. And then are you seeing brands abandon traditional channels and maybe launch new capabilities like D2C?
Yeah, how hasn't it affected it? I mean, I think obviously there's been a mass rush to ecom, which I think everybody here sort of understands. I think a lot of the smarter companies, found a way to balance reasonably and not swing the pendulum really hard in one direction or another, trying to balance some of those national initiatives with their sales driving tactics. I mean, we've certainly seen brands accelerate D2C. I wouldn't call that new. We've seen a lot of them exploring micro fulfillment center strategies just to get it off the ground and get it running quick. But I think it's important to remember when we're talking about CPG brands, a lot of the avenues that they use to get products into the hands of the consumers aren't necessarily always going to be the most profitable ones to them. So for us, it literally comes down to, how we see other CPG brands scaling with D2C profitably, and then subsequently, what does their marketplace strategy look like from there?
Awesome. Nico, what about you?
Yeah, it's interesting as you know, as you can imagine, the telemedicine space has really accelerated this year because of COVID. You know, we have definitely, you know, I think the trend has been moving more and more to supporting the telemedicine case, but obviously this year has really accelerated. I think one thing that we've seen in the early part of the year was obviously there's a big pullback in advertising dollars. So we were able to really scoop up a lot of demand at a pretty affordable rate. But what started to happen as we've gotten closer to, you know, into Q4 and even in Q3 is there's been more and more competitor telemedicine and regular providers that have been also increasing their ad spend. And so our costs have started to come back up. But we're still seeing some pretty strong demand at the same time. So,
yeah, I bet telemedicine is definitely people didn't want to go to the doctors early on, so telemedicine was a good option there. Drew, how about in the artistic world?
Yeah, so we're kind of solidly in the retail sector, and so we caught sort of an early big lift when as soon as kind of everyone got shut down and the share of wallet got pushed into sort of only online sort of pure plays, and anybody that has the ability to, I guess, check out. And so our growth has been really big, and so we've had to make some changes to our portfolio mix through the year a little bit to accommodate. And through the second half of the year, we've really started to see some sort of new competitors and additional stiffer competition, as I think more companies are sort of expanding their lifetime values and finding ways to really get aggressive in the market as this lift is sort of proving out larger values for them in the future.
Okay, kind of talking about those new competitors. Who are some of those competitors, and are you seeing them? What type of new ways are they coming into the space?
Yeah, so I guess the biggest one to note would be for us as far as overlap, and we sell a lot of apparel and a lot of stickers. And so Wish actually really kind of exploded into the space for us this year. And interestingly, you know, they just have a very different tracking model than we do, or most of our other competitors, where you're just not allowed into the platform unless you give away your PII and join the system. And so that really is a marked difference in how we operate our e-com platform versus how they force people to come in through the login wall to even see the products.
Yeah, definitely understand. And that PII is great information to have and be able to utilize for targeting. So, Nico, you were talking about some, you know, as the spin came back up with some of your competitors, were any of those new competitors coming in the space, maybe like innovative, new emerging platforms from the telemedicine area?
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these where we're really seeing more spend is competitors that we've been aware of, but they're about sort of, you know, our size in terms of, you know, newer startup telemedicine company. Really what we've seen is that they've been really ramping their spend. And so our verticals have been increasingly seeing higher CPMs and competition in auctions. I think the other thing that we're tracking very closely is that Amazon also recently announced its entry into sort of the pharmacy space. So, which is a theme I think is increasingly, you know, happening with more and more sort of Amazon choosing sectors to enter. And I think from our perspective, we are anticipating there to be more auction competition as a result of that. And then we also see competition from larger brands like Gilead is a competitor in one of our verticals that also seems to be leaning in more into paid channels as well.
Okay. And Ree, how about you for your clients? Have you seen any new competitors coming in? Are they doing anything different?
I mean, look, competition is sort of just the nature of the business. It happens all the time. I think what's really interesting is not just our competitors, but, you know, even other CPG large players or mass commercial competitors really pivoting their digital strategies and just blasting channels. And I think that's a really interesting sort of approach to do it. There's always been 2 or 3 competitors like on the market that would consistently do that. but some rather aggressive buys, especially as we get into like these, e-retail environments, which for all intents and purposes are pay to play, whether we like it or not, can have an adverse effect on not just our media spend, but our actual overall performance. And I think that's one of the things that we've been looking out for, not so much new competitors, but, within some of these smaller digital heavy players, and then even, some of the bigger brands that want to get a bit more aggressive, is how to circumvent just getting hit with dollars. I think is always an interesting problem to deal with.
Yeah, definitely. Nico, I'll let you start this one. Have you guys really expanded into any new channels that have kind of emerged in popularity, or are you planning to in 2021? For example, Snapchat or TikTok, Instagram, maybe some of the new media networks. And then if you have jumped into them, how have they performed?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have been testing Snapchat and TikTok a bit. I think, overall they've been showing promise. I think one thing is we were pretty saturated with some of our more mature services, more on Facebook and Instagram. So obviously we're trying to think how to continue to scale those channels. Snapchat and Facebook, and TikTok so far is showing promise. I think one thing that we're very much trying to see takes shape is how, especially on the TikTok side, it starts to evolve as a channel that is more mature from a pixel technology standpoint. I think, at this point, TikTok only is able to optimize to in-session click activity. So it creates more limitations in how far we can go with bidding and conversion optimization. So as these channels or as these platforms start to evolve further with the things that you can do in them, I think that will sort of lead and pave the way to more spend and experimentation. One other big tactic I think that is new for us and is obviously increasingly more important for e-commerce is Google Shopping. So we actually have been looking at how the aspects of our service actually manifest as physical products and how we can kind of piece that apart from a site experience standpoint and then be able to leverage that in Google Shopping in particular. So that is an exciting new channel for us that should be coming online very soon. And I think it kind of, from an industry standpoint, paves the way for other maybe traditionally non-e-commerce brands and industry to sort of think about how that could potentially be a tactic to leverage and is a little unconventional.
Nice. And Drew, I know you guys are really big into Google Shopping and have thousands and thousands of products that you've listed. But what about you in terms of like some new platforms?
Yeah, so we have experimented with some of the social platforms that, kind of silo data like Snapchat. And it makes it tough to tell a larger story when, all of the attribution just remains inside of that silo. And so we've had to build different stories to attribute that media and tell the, explanation for why we're indexing so much into those channels. I think, which is fine for all the rich media stuff, but into shopping, we've really deeply been struggling to kind of make our relevance higher, and so we've been really pushing to use the same feeds that we use for shopping and expand those into all of our other channels that we're experimenting. And so we're in some new alphas that allow us to do more dynamic product ads and in paid social platforms, which has been really interesting. And so I think that, we don't have a huge appetite for like crazy smaller channels, but some of our sort of these larger channels where the attribution is bad, at least have been upgrading some of their features so that we can start to experiment in more sort of performant mediums with them, like dynamic product ads that are powered by feeds. And so Snapchat has been one of those betas that's been really interesting, where we used to be able to just select a static 10 products, and now they're sort of starting to push larger features that allow sort of dynamic customization based on product feeds.
That's awesome. And Riyaad, what about you in terms of new platforms your clients have jumped into?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Drew and Nico kind of hit it off well. I mean, these are largely unsophisticated platforms. So are people getting their feet wet? Absolutely, and I think they probably should. But I don't think the time has passed where the KPI is really available now to give CPGs any sort of inkling as to like its real performance. And outside of just like direct e-com performance, what its long-term value is. You know, so what do reorder rates look like? Are we paying higher acquisition costs on some of these placements? Is there any sort of prolonged value to these investments? I think is a big question that people are asking. I mean, realistically, you know, we expect platforms to try to make a play for e-com dollars. We lose consumers all the time to ASP and to the planogram. So shortening the path to purchase absolutely makes sense. I think as we look into 2021, we're still very much in a test and learn phase, trying to find out if this is actually an e-commerce play. Is this more of a national play? We obviously approach e-commerce with a certain rigor and consistency, both to optimizations and the strategy that we may not need to when it comes to some of these more salient national buys. And I think it becomes really interesting as we go into 2021, as we discover what the purpose is of each of these platforms and how to best utilize them long term.
Gotcha. We have we've got a question from the audience for Nico. Jeff, do you want to, or is it, sorry, Jay, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. Hey guys, making sure you can hear me okay. Nico, it seems like you're in one of those industries that, you know, was sort of in the right position in the right place. You know, obviously for COVID, I'm just wondering what kind of challenges you faced, if any, with finding the right telemedicine audiences, you know, during the pandemic. You talked about how explosive it's been, but wondering where your challenges have been. And is it all B2C? Are you marketing to doctor offices, healthcare companies, and consumers? Like, what's your core market?
Yeah, it's all D2C, and most of our customers, and I mentioned our beginnings was in the birth control space. So most of our customers are patients, are sort of the millennial women. It represents most of our customers. What we've been doing and experimenting a lot with is, and as you can imagine on, you know, social platforms, most of our targeting is pretty broad in nature, but it skews mostly towards that demographic, that profile. What we've been doing to really see how we can push, and this matters especially for our other service lines outside of birth control, is doing a lot of creative experimentation. And trying to understand, you know, between different types of product lines and different types of consumers who could use those products, what could potentially resonate from a creative standpoint, and then also try to test a variety of existing user lookalikes along with broad targeting for those new creative formats. So that's been a lot of what we've been doing. For example, you know, we're trying to go outside of the younger female demographic that we've been getting for birth control and testing concepts for targeted at older birth control users, just as an example. And then on the search side, we've been spending more time thinking about what is required to convert from a content experience standpoint in terms of the different keywords that we've been expanding into. So it does kind of vary by channel, but that's been sort of the thought process that we've been going through this year.
Okay, great. Thanks.
And I have a question for you guys.
Hi. So I know that Pinterest has come to us quite often, and they've said that they are a search engine, a search engine for non-brand. I don't know, have they approached you guys at all about that? And how has your ROI been? Because it's more of like a non-brand upper funnel play, if anything. I don't know how's it gone for you guys?
So on our side, we work with Pinterest actually quite often, and I don't think I've ever referred to them or really thought of them as a search engine. So it's interesting that, they like said that.
Like, we're a search engine. We're like, okay.
Yeah, no, look, I like Pinterest. I kind of love Pinterest. There's a lot of instances in which we use them. I think they've got wonderful partnerships through IRI Lift. They've got a number of partnerships through key retailers, you know, like Target via Roundel, that I think work very well. We don't do it for direct conversion driving activity, nor do we think about it in terms of doing search. It's largely exploratory. We think about it the same way we think about any sort of discovery module.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can add a little bit to that. Yeah, I feel like it's if there's like a funnel for conversion, it like Pinterest lives like somewhere up in the clouds, like above that, where people are like dreaming about something they might or might not do in this lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, like we've looked at some of like the search keywords that come up for things that we bid on, and like some of the stuff for like Chase credit cards, they have us bidding on like DIY menorah, and I'm like, I don't understand how that comes together with like a Chase Freedom credit card. But
yeah, sorry, Reed, they have two really big ad types, and the one where you're just placing sort of pieces of content and promoting them is pretty loosey-goosey. But if you place a structured feed and then you replace the imagery in the structured feed to not be like Google Shopping, to be more big and illustrative, sort of like good Pinterest posts, then it can be fairly productive, kind of like a search engine, but it still doesn't produce good return on investment, even if you've taken all those steps. Sorry, Rhea, I kind of interrupted you.
No, I think I was just laughing at the keyword suggestion.
Yeah. So for me in a prior life, I did look at Pinterest and did get sort of the same Pinterest commentary that, you know, we have sort of this emerging search engine functionality, and I think it's not, you know, directly comparable obviously to Google search. It's much broader, higher level type search in terms of the way that it's matching visually to pins. I think one other interesting thing about Pinterest is and unfortunately for the telemedicine space at this point, we're not able to leverage Pinterest as a platform given rules. But it tends to be, I would say, a little different from a measurement standpoint, just because it's a much longer conversion. People tend to convert much longer, and your pins stay around for a much longer period of time. Whereas obviously for creative on Facebook, etc., it's pretty quick and leaves. So, you know, I've done a little bit of testing from a conversion standpoint, but I think, as I've heard mentioned, it's very tough to see attribution in our other tools for Pinterest.
Thank you.
And guys, we have another question from Alex Moody. Go ahead, Alex.
Hi there, guys. Hopefully you can hear me okay. A question back to Nico. From our experience in the medical sector, and talking about Google here, the lack of ability to use first-party data in targeting, retargeting. I'd love to hear about how you're dealing with that, where normally you've got a bit more in the toolkit, but in the medical sector, as one example, it's a bit more restrictive.
Yeah, so that's actually something we talk a lot about, as you can imagine. So one thing that we've been doing as a way to kind of shortcut some of the retargeting problems in Google is using custom intent and keyword type different keywords that we know result in is sort of akin to retargeting. So a lot of times branded search and deploying that in custom intent type environments is a way that we've been testing sort of quasi retargeting. We also work to leverage Facebook heavily for retargeting, because there isn't some of the same limitations that you get with Google as far as what you can and can't do on retargeting in our space. We are going to be looking soon at doing more programmatic retargeting as well, as another way to kind of see outside of Facebook how we can get economies of scale at lower CPMs from a retargeting standpoint.
Great, thank you.
Great. Well, guys, you guys were awesome. Thank you so much. And Todd, perfect job of moderating here. So I appreciate it. And